quercetin, and much more. Save your money, save your time. Compare, and you'll find that there is no more researched or superior product available on the market today. Call now and get your discount prices on your next Bio Superfood at 303-257-7576, 303-257-7576, or biosuperfood@hotmail.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tom Phillips, founder of the Green Herb.
All of God's people have a ministry, and it's a trick of our enemy to keep God's people sick and worn out to hinder their ability to minister. We are often judgmental toward people who are addicted to booze, cigarettes, and drugs, but we at the Green Herb have found that most of God's people are unknowingly addicted to the two most addictive products in America, sugar and soda pop. If you have a sickness or disease, or if you're just tired a lot, the Green Herb has an herbal product that is formulated just for you, and it's just $15.95. Come by the Green Herb, located in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, on the I-70 Frontage Road North, 1 mile west of Kipling, or call 888-765-HERB. That's 888-765-4372, or go to our website, www.thegreenherb.com, and be sure to listen to the Green Herb Show with Linda and Dr. Cass every Tuesday at 1 o'clock on KHNC.
The Senate is set to vote on the Orwellian Disclose Act for a second time. Think you know Condi Rice? Listen to her shocking speech about the Palestinians. And we'll take a look at 12 hellholes that serve as examples of what the rest of America will look like soon. My name is Howard Riell, and this is Real Truth. You're listening to the American Freedom Network, streaming live around the world at AmericanNewsNet.com, and on Facebook, and on YouTube, and on Real TV, and in the book, Real Truth, Stay Angry. And, of course, as always, broadcasting out across the Colorado Front Range on KHNC, Johnstown, Colorado, 1360 AM, The Lion. The call-in number 877-254-7524. My friends, welcome back. Let's hit it. Item from Michelle Malkin. Always look under the AstroTurf mat. Senate Democrats have failed to pass a budget in nearly 1,200 days, but they are carving out time today to vote on the loophole-ridden incumbency protection racket masquerading as campaign finance reform, dubbed the Disclose Act. Wait a minute. Didn't they already vote on the Disclose Act? Why, yes. Yes, they did. They voted on it in September 2010 before the midterms, and it failed to meet the 60-vote threshold. I told you 2 years ago, in July 2010, why the Disclose Act was a sham. You know, when a politician starts a sentence with frankly, he's about to lie to your face. The same principle applies to campaign finance legislation dubbed the Disclose Act. The voters' instinctive reaction should be, what are they trying to hide now? Drafted out of public view with left-wing lobbyists and rammed through Congress after bypassing committee hearings, this bum bill would have been better named the Closed Door Act. At a Rose Garden press conference on Monday, President Obama decried the influence of, quote, shadow groups on elections and urged the Senate to pass the reform sponsored by New York Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer. But the loophole-ridden package exempts large nonprofits with 500,000 or more members. Behemoth labor unions get preferential treatment. Bradley Smith, former Federal Elections Commission chairman, noted that the law places radical speech-squelching restrictions on companies' ability to run independent political ads. Quote, if you're a company with a government contract of over $10 million, like more than half of the top 50 U.S. companies, or if you're a company with more than 20% foreign shareholders, you can't even mention a candidate in an ad for up to a full year before the election. There are no similar prohibitions for unions representing government contractors or unions with foreign membership. GOP Senator Mitch McConnell put it more starkly during Tuesday's debate before the Senate cloture vote on the bill. Quote, the Disclose Act, he said, is a transparent attempt to rig the fall elections. At bottom, McConnell diagnosed correctly, this is a jobs protection bill for entrenched incumbents more interested in protecting their hides than protecting the Constitution. While the cloture vote fell 3 votes short of the needed 60 on Tuesday, Schumer vowed to resurrect the issue again and again and again until we pass it. Team Obama and their allies on Capitol Hill have some nerve gnashing their teeth about transparency after 2 years of backdoor kickbacks, secret big labor deal, C-SPAN camera evasion, White House disclosure ducking, coffeehouse meetings, and sunlight shirking, holiday and midnight floor votes. And while they preached about America's right to know and posed as crusaders for open access, Democratic leaders in both the House and Senate continue to stonewall on public hearings for health care rationing czar Donald Berwick, Obama's recess-appointed head of Medicare and Medicaid. A White House spokesman called the battle over the Disclose Act a defining moment for the public. Nah, it's just another example of the Democratic majority's endless hide-and-seek hypocrisy. Unquote. My friends, take away that nah. It can be a defining moment for the public. Here's how we make it so. Call the White House telephone line. Call your senators' telephone lines. Call your congressmen's telephone lines. If each person makes one call, that's millions of calls. Call them and say no to the Disclose Act. We voted on it already. It was turned down. We don't want to have to keep voting on the same thing again and again. America said no. Drop it. And the next time you go and vote, my friends, don't vote for the incumbent. Vote for the challenger. That's how you restore government. Item from Morton Klein, writing in the Daily Forward, the headline, Condi's shocking speech. I quote, I've heard and read many speeches on the Arab-Israeli conflict. Those made by well-known hostile critics of Israel always caused me great pain by their use of hyperbole, absurd analogy, and falsehoods. But I was not prepared for a speech by an American Secretary of State with those very attributes, such as the keynote address delivered last week by Condoleezza Rice to the gala dinner of the American Task Force on Palestine in Washington. My friends, one thing I forgot to say, this is a speech that Morton Klein heard back in 2006, okay? This is from the archives, okay? Despite Rice's claims about moderate Palestinians, their own polls show Palestinians consistently approve of suicide bombings and terrorism, rocket attacks on Israel, and the kidnapping of Israeli soldiers. So what did Condi Rice say? By echoing Palestinian propaganda statements, such as her reference to daily humiliation of occupation, Rice ignored the fact that Judea, Samaria, and Gaza are not occupied territory, but disputed territory. Territory, in fact, to which Israel's religious, political, and historical claims are far stronger than Arab claims. Rice did not acknowledge that these lands had been illegally occupied by Jordan and Egypt from 1948 to 1967, before coming under Israeli control in the 1967 War of Self-Defense. She also ignored that Israel ceded half of Judea and Samaria and all of Gaza, lands in which 98% of the Palestinian Arab population resides. Therefore, how can it be said the Palestinians are occupied? Throughout the speech, Rice repeatedly pledged her support for PA President Mahmoud Abbas, calling him a moderate leader. But is he a moderate leader? He co-founded the terrorist group Fatah with Yasser Arafat and was his deputy for 40 years. He funded the Munich massacre. He wrote a PhD thesis in a book denying the Holocaust. As president of the PA, Abbas said, quote, "It is our duty to implement the principles of Yasser Arafat." He refers to terrorists as heroes fighting for freedom. He rebuffed President Bush's call at the 2005 Aqaba summit to accept Israel publicly as a Jewish state. He declared that neither Fatah nor Hamas need to recognize Israel. He approved legislation mandating financial benefits to be paid to families of Palestinian shaheeds, that is, dead terrorists. He praised the Lebanese terror group Hezbollah and endorsed the so-called prisoners plan, which supports terrorism, does not accept Israel's legitimacy as a Jewish state. We'll be back.
Now, this is the testimony of John when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" He confessed and did not deny, but confessed, "I am not the Messiah." And they asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" And he answered, "No." The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 19 through 21.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution.
Restore Health and Counseling salutes the men and women in uniform who've answered the call for our freedoms. Let's give them the hero's welcome they deserve, as they have fought hard to restore peace. America's troops are our angels of protection, so stand up and salute them proudly. That's from Restore Health and Counseling at 4705 Paris Street, serving Northeast Denver with complete substance abuse counseling for adolescent to adult and for private as well as professional drug, alcohol screening and treatment and rehabilitation. Visit us at www.rhctherapy.com or call 303-373-1188. Whether you're in automotive, sporting goods, hardware, health, wellness, electrical, electronics, construction, carpet cleaning, legal, or animal care, and offer exceptional customer service and provide quality services or goods, you're honest, reliable, and professional. If you have a business, we have the customers. Let us put you in touch with our loyal, supportive, and dedicated listeners today. They're waiting to hear from you. It's inexpensive. It's effective. Call KHNC at 1-800-205-6245.
My friends, welcome back to Real Truth. The upshot of that item about Condi Rice is the fact that she was on record on more than one occasion as having said some very, very complimentary things about the Palestinians in general and Mahmoud Abbas in particular, murderers all. The reason it's important is that Condi Rice's name is being bandied about as a possible running mate for Mitt Romney. Well, I used to be a Condi Rice supporter. But hearing her referring to terrorist murderers as freedom fighters, and hearing her refer to the murderer, Mahmoud Abbas, as a moderate, tells me that Condi Rice is not ready to be vice president, and never will be. Morton Klein of the ZOA finishes his column by noting the following, I quote, Secretary Rice ignored all of this and delivered the most pro-Palestinian speech in memory by a senior U.S. administration official. This speech is surely at odds with an administration that claims to be the best friend Israel ever had. If the president does not subscribe to the themes in her speech, he should publicly distance himself from it immediately, unquote. The bottom line is this, Condi Rice is not good for Israel, which means, directly, that Condi Rice is not good for America. Now, speaking of good for America, let's turn to Dick Morris, who's talking about Obama, who is also not good for America. He says the U.S. will sign a gun control treaty on July 27th. That's 11 days from now. This is Dick Morris. Let's give a listen.
Gun control imposed by the United Nations. That's what we'll talk about today in the video. Have you noticed that Obama has not talked about gun control much in his 4 years as president? He's advocated every other liberal measure that's been kicking around, but he's quiet on the issue of gun control. Well, that's because he knows he couldn't get it passed. He knows he couldn't get a lot of Democrats to vote for it. So he and Hillary Clinton on July 27th, this month, are going to sign a treaty in New York City which will obligate the United States to participate in a global regime of gun control. We talk about it in our book, Screwed, and we give you the background on it. But when we wrote this, they hadn't set the date for signing the treaty. But please read all about it here, because this is going to be one of the big fights we're going to have to wage, likely during the lame duck session of Congress. It's called the Arms Trade Treaty, the ATT. And again, what the UN always does is there's a theoretical upfront objective that they advertise, and then there's their real intent. The theoretical objective of the ATT is to regulate the arms trade so that we don't have this constant trade in munitions and death going back and forth across national borders. Of course, this is ridiculous because most of the arms trade is by the governments, and this does nothing to regulate government arms trafficking. But it does regulate individual arms trafficking. So the ostensible purpose of it is really a fraud, a fake. The real purpose of this is that it will set up an international agency that will be in charge of controlling the flow of arms throughout the world. And while it will theoretically only have jurisdiction over arms flows across national borders, like the Interstate Commerce Clause, we see how that can be expanded. And it really will have the authority to tell member nations to adopt policies within their own countries to facilitate regulation of flows across borders. And those could include and will include registration, and may well include bans on arms and handguns and all of that. Now, if this treaty is ratified by the Senate, it assumes parity with the Second Amendment. It's as if there is a new 27th or 28th Amendment to the Constitution of this treaty, because the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution says treaties are the law of the land and cannot be overridden by acts of Congress or acts of the state legislature. In fact, even if we don't ratify the thing, but Obama signs it, under the Vienna Convention, we are obliged not to do anything to counter this treaty and while we're considering ratifying it. It's only if a subsequent president renounces the treaty, which he can't do after the Senate's confirmed it, but which he can before, that it's no longer binding on the United States. So for those of us who value the Second Amendment right to bear arms, this is absolutely pivotal. What they're doing is they've changed the venue, but it's the same fight. So please, this is going to come up for ratification in the fall. They're signing it on July 27th. We need a storm of protest relating to the signing of it. We have a petition on our site right next to, you can click on the link here to go to Hillary to oppose signing it. But please, this is something that's very, very important for all of us that value the Second Amendment and believe in it, that think that's what it says. Well, thanks very much for watching.
So, folks, find this video on YouTube and send it to everyone whose email address you have. That's number one. Number two, post it on Facebook. Number three, once again, call your politicians. Call the White House. Call Congress. Call Senate. Call the people who represent you and scream that we are diametrically opposed to this treaty. We want it killed. We want it dead on arrival. Item from John Whitehead at the Rutherford Institute, The Selling of the Presidency, Politics in the Age of Television. I quote, keeping with the spirit of his 2008 Hope and Change campaign slogans, Barack Obama has adopted Forward as his 2012 campaign slogan, while Mitt Romney is standing behind the phrase, Believe in America. Neither of these sound bites speaks to the reality of our times. The fact that we are a nation drowning in debt, crippled by a slowing economy, besieged by endless wars, and a military-industrial complex intent on starting new ones, riddled with corrupt politicians at every level of government, suffering from dismal literacy scores despite the fact that we spend outrageous sums on education, and on and on. Despite this, the powers that be, the corporations and other members of the moneyed elite, are spending vast amounts of money in an effort to persuade us to buy their particular product, the candidates, on Election Day. However, as recent history makes clear, nothing takes place on Election Day that will alleviate the suffering of the American people. The government, as we have come to know it, corrupt, bloated, and controlled by big money corporations, lobbyists, and special interest groups, will be largely unchanged. And we, the people, overtaxed, overpoliced, overburdened by big government, underrepresented by those who should speak for us, and blissfully ignorant of the prison walls closing in on us, will continue to trudge along a path of misery. Much of the blame for this has to do with the fact that television is the dominant medium of our media-dominated age. Like the atom bomb, which altered both the American psyche and the cultural landscape of the mid-20th century, television has likewise altered the nature of political power in everyday life. In fact, television doesn't just affect society. In the words of Jeffrey Scheuer in his book, The Soundbite Society, quote, to a great extent, it is society. All politics is no longer simply local. Most politics and most popular culture is televisual, unquote. Televised politics is deceptive, corrupt, and manipulative. The awful campaign ads which help decide modern elections are a prime example of the death of any truth in politics. These ads, compiled by political strategists with the assistance of their corporate advertising firms, have one aim:
getting their product elected. As journalist William Fisher writes, television ads, quote, pander to our basest fears and prejudices, and they make it even more difficult for voters to make rational, informed decisions, unquote. By way of television, politics has become a form of entertainment, dominated by money and profit, imagery and spin, hype and personality. We've entered a new age of political discourse in which Americans, sheep-like, are content to think in sound bites and elect a president based on who can deliver the best campaign slogans and punchlines. But the campaign rhetoric of the leading presidential contenders tells us absolutely nothing about what the candidates can actually deliver. The candidates may very well hold substantive positions on critical issues of the day, yet what we hear are 30-second platitudes, and all we see are airbrushed images and smiling faces. Between the incessant campaign commercials and televised debates, America is being treated to a tightly crafted entertainment spectacle that gives credence to Ronald Reagan's assertion that politics is just like show business, and the politicians have become the entertainers. In The Last Hurrah, Edwin O'Connor's novel about corrupt politics, Mayor Frank Skeffington tries to instruct his young nephew in the realities of political machinery. Politics, he tells him, is the greatest spectator sport in America. We are, of course, accustomed to being entertained, amused, and distracted. Television, after all, is our national pastime. On average, American households watch more than 8 hours of television per day, which includes nearly 3 hours of commercials. An American who's reached the age of 40 will have seen well over 1 million television commercials in his or her lifetime and has another million to go before the first Social Security check arrives, writes Professor Neil Postman in his book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. The candidates understand this. That's why television and television advertising in particular has become such a favored medium for politicians. Television has altered the nature of political power, the means of political discourse, and the way in which Americans think about and relate to their government. And television in general is driven by commercials aimed at selling you a product. The effect of TV ads upon the viewing public has been so successful and pervasive that it's impossible for a politician to wage a successful election campaign without the use of television advertising. Recognizing how powerful and manipulative a tool this can be, certain countries such as France, Germany, and the UK actually forbid paid political advertisements on television. Like television commercials, image politics is so much more about charm, good looks, and celebrity status than it is about truth. Those who would be gods refashion themselves into images the viewers would have them to be, notes Postman. Thus, very little happens in front of the camera that is not pre-planned, strategized, and intended to manipulate the viewer's response. Much like toothpaste, politicians have become products for consumption. Driven by market research, political ads are designed to sell you a politician, as opposed to actually giving any in-depth information about the candidates themselves. This is an invaluable tool for politicians and their corporate sponsors who can gear their message toward what the voter wants rather than what the nation needs. In this way, television politics does not attempt to convey who might be best at being president, but rather who has the best slogans and can get the best ratings. There is no such thing as a 60-second solution to the world's problems. And there's no way to decide on the best candidate for the White House by watching a heavily scripted debate. Unfortunately, television advertising and our entertainment culture have adapted us to commercial-style content. As a result, Americans are fast losing the ability to think for themselves, let alone think analytically or contextually. Moreover, despite the fact that Americans intuitively recognize that something is wrong, they allow themselves to be lulled into a false sense of security by the government, the politicians, and their corporate handlers. As General Hainsworth remarks in A Face in the Crowd, quote, "My study of history has convinced me that in every strong society from the Egyptians on, the mass had to be guided with a strong hand by a responsible elite. Let us not forget that in TV, we have the greatest instrument for mass persuasion in the history of the world," unquote. My friends, listen to me. Listen closely. Okay? Why is it that the candidate who spends the most gets elected? What does that say about the candidate? Well, it just says he has money. People want to give him millions in dollars because they know they're going to get those millions back plus some.
So they're investing in a purchase. Why does the politician win? Because we vote for him. That's why, obviously. Why do we vote for the politician who spends the most? Why are we responding to expenditures? Why are we responding to television time, to commercials? If you go to newspapers, then most of them will have responsible articles about issues. In fact, they'll cover them on an ongoing basis. If you go out into the blogosphere and the news sites on the Internet, you will find millions and millions of words about every major and minor issue there is, enough so that you can study and become an expert in the issue and become an expert in where the various politicians and candidates stand. That being given, who does that? Who does it? You know, you've seen the same campaign signs in your neighborhoods that I have, these little picket signs that go into the grass. All they have is the name and possibly the picture of the candidate. How could that possibly be effective? It doesn't tell me what the candidate believes in, how he or she will vote, what kind of job they're going to do. All it tells me is the name. Well, that's the point. They figure if you see the name often enough, you'll pull the switch for that name. Rhesus monkeys can do that, my friends. We've got to be on a little bit higher level when we go to vote. We'll be back.
Just a good old boy. Hi, I'm Eric Cedarstrom. For over a decade, I've been the CEO, shipping clerk, and janitor of the Patriot Trading Group. And in that time, I've made friends with tens of thousands of like-minded individuals all over this country, most like me, trying to raise a family, run a business, and make sense out of a world gone mad. I'm proud of the fact that through stock bubbles, housing bubbles, and financial chaos, our customers are prospering and doing very well. By keeping our prices fair and our service fast, we find that 80% of our customers not only reorder, but they tell their friends. Don't be fooled by hype and high pressure. Do business with a company you can trust. Call the Patriot Trading Group at 1-800-951-0592 or check out our website at allamericangold.com. You'll be treated with honesty and respect. You have my word on it. I'm Eric Cedarstrom, CEO, shipping clerk, and janitor.
Making your way the only way they know how.
And of his fullness we have all received, and grace for grace. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, He has declared Him. The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 16.
No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque or reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. Article 1, Section 10.
The Beth Messiah Congregation invites you to come and experience a Messianic Roots biblically based congregational fellowship as we observe God's Shabbat in Messiah Yeshua. Praise and worship services begin at 10:30 a.m., followed by an Oneg Shabbat meal, mid-Rosh, and fellowship. Beth Messiah Congregation is located at 8333 Acoma Way in North Denver. You can find out more information by calling 1-800-205-6245. Everyone's welcome, so join us this Shabbat. And Shabbat Shalom, good Sabbath. CINN Stations in Alt salutes our troops. Whether you're for the war or against it, they're still there. These men and women deserve more than our support. They deserve the comfort of home. Send a military care package today. Just type military care package into a search engine. Point and click. Let's show our troops we care. This message from CINN Stations in Alt, wishing Godspeed to our fighting men and women and thanking them for their triumphs and their sacrifices.
We are back, and I am going to throw the microphone back to my buddy Dick Morris, who's got another video on YouTube, and you'll find it there. The headline is Obamacare becomes Obama tax. And if you're one of those people who, and there aren't many of you, believe me, who think Obamacare is going to be good for any of us, Give a listen to what Dick Morris has to say.
Obamacare becomes Obama tax. That's what we'll talk about today in the lunch video. Hope you had a nice July 4th. Hope you had a chance to look at the history video about the philosophical underpinnings of the Declaration of Independence. It's kind of cool. If you haven't done it yet, go back and look at it. It's very rare that you get a Supreme Court decision on the meaning of political rhetoric. Normally you throw it back and forth and you hope that the voters put their own spin on it. But here we actually have a Supreme Court ruling that says that Obamacare is a tax. In fact, that was the only way that Justice Roberts could find to validate the law and to uphold it, was under the Constitution's power to tax. So Barack Obama's got a big problem now. He pledged as his most seminal act during the election campaign that he would not raise taxes on anybody making less than $200,000 a year. He said it over and over and over again. Now the Wall Street Journal reports that 3/4 of the cost of Obamacare is going to be absorbed by people who make less than $120,000 a year. And a great deal of it will be absorbed by people making $30,000 and $40,000 and $50,000 a year. Here's how it works. If you make, let's say, $40,000 a year, you have to pay on your own, out of your own resources, up to about 7% of your income, about $3,000 for health insurance. And then if your policy costs more than that, the feds will kick in and will help you get it. But you have to pay the first 7% yourself. And if you don't do that, then you have to pay a fine that by 2016 for a family in your income bracket would be about $2,000. So one way or another, people that are making $40,000 a year, I mean something like $800 a week before taxes, are now going to have to pay upwards of $2,000 to $3,000 for health care courtesy of the federal government. And the IRS is going to be enforcing it. Obama's hiring extra agents to do that. So he squarely now is repudiating his own campaign pledge. Now, he can hide behind saying, oh, this is a fine, this is a penalty, this isn't a tax, this is a payment in lieu of health insurance, but the Supreme Court's ruled it's a tax, and it obviously is. Beyond just the definitional issue, the court has really focused attention on the aspect of Obamacare that received the least attention during the debate over its passage. We focused extensively, particularly I did, on the issue of rationing for the elderly, that this would set up a government bureaucracy that would tell the elderly what care they can and can't get, that I think is a form of euthanasia, denying important medication to old people because they're too old and don't have a lot of quality life years remaining. What a horrible phrase. The other focus, of course, was on the overall impact of this on medical costs and on the deficit and on the budget. But relatively little attention was paid to its implications as a tax increase. And here you have this big tax increase squarely hitting Obama's political base, young people and poor people, absolutely singling them out and zeroing in a tax on them. So this makes the tax issue a huge issue. It's a question of character. It undermines Obama's whole case about him only taxing the rich. It undermines his accusation that Romney doesn't care about the average person because here he is taxing the living daylights out of the average person. And it really represents a whole new front in the offensive against Obamacare. And bear in mind, that is now really the major issue in this election. Very close to the only issue in this election. The courts put it front and center, just like the Dred Scott decision in 1859 made that the major issue in the election of 1860. I'm sorry, 1857 was the Dred Scott. But it made it the major issue in the 1860 election. The court has the capacity to do that, to put something front and center. And we already have been encouraged by the fact that Obama got a little bit of a bump from the court decision. He pulled even in the Rasmussen poll. Now he's 3 behind. And the percentage that favor repeal of the health care law seems to be holding fairly steady in the mid to high 50s, presaging perhaps a 15-point margin of defeat for Obama, because that's the margin by which Obamacare goes down. And, of course, the economy continues to get worse. So this is going to be a very exciting, very, I think, fulfilling year. Now, listen, we have to get on the air and start re-educating the public about Obamacare. We have to start explaining again to the elderly how this is euthanasia, how it really limits their life and their quality of life. We have to start explaining again to the American people about the health care and deficit issues that are involved. And we have to start publicizing the tax increases that are included in Obamacare. So go to my website and you'll find out what you can do to help. But we really need help to really make this work. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dick Morris. Important words, my friends, important words. Do indeed go to his website. I'm guessing it's dickmorris.com. See what he has to say, because it's important stuff. Let's move on. Item from AmericanVisionNews.com. I quote, "The Family Research Council writes, since Mr. Obama's entry into office, Christians have been slaughtered throughout the bloody crescent with hardly a peep from the U.S. State Department or the White House. Nigerian human rights activist Emmanuel Ogebe recently reported that more Christians have been killed by Islamist Boko Haram than NATO troops have been killed in Afghanistan. Hundreds of thousands of Christians have fled Iraq. They fled into Syria, of all places. Operation Iraqi Freedom has not protected them. In fact, their lot has been made much worse since the Bush administration toppled Saddam Hussein and allowed, in fact, required a new Iraqi constitution containing a repugnancy clause. State Department advisors insisted upon this clause. It says that notwithstanding anything else in the new constitution, nothing shall be done by the Iraqi government that is repugnant to Islam. Well, among the things repugnant to Islam is saying Jesus is Lord. That will get you killed. It did get a young Tunisian Christian killed. Recently, Egyptian TV showed the horror of a young convert from Islam to Christianity being beheaded. The Egyptian news anchor, to his credit, cried out, "Is this what we want here?" And he asked the anguished question, how will these people govern? Sadly, the answers are in the broadcast. Yes, it is what the Egyptian voters want in Egypt. Fully 84% of Egyptians have told pollsters that apostates from Islam should be killed. They just voted for it. How will the new Islamists govern? By publicly cutting off the heads of their opponents. Simple enough. Only a few organizations have picked up the story of this beheading. It seems to have been largely ignored by the American media. Here's a report from the Barnabas Fund. Quote, "Video footage of a convert from Islam to Christianity being murdered by Muslims has been shown on Egyptian TV. The graphic incident, which is reported to have taken place in Tunisia, was aired on a program called Egypt Today. The footage shows a young man being held down by masked men with a knife to his throat. One man chants a number of Muslim prayers in Arabic, mostly condemning Christianity. The man holding the knife to the Christian convert's throat begins to cut, slowly severing the head amid cries of Allahu Akbar, God is great," unquote. We'll be back.
The Beth Messiah Congregation invites you to come and experience a Messianic Roots biblically based congregational fellowship as we observe God's Shabbat in Messiah Yeshua. Praise and worship services begin at 10:30 a.m., followed by an Oneg Shabbat meal mid-Rosh and fellowship. Beth Messiah Congregation is located at 8333 Acoma Way in North Denver. You can find out more information by calling 1-800-205-6245. Everyone's welcome, so join us this Shabbat. And Shabbat Shalom, good Sabbath.
An emergency preparedness plan for your home, car, school, and office is a must. Knowing how to store water safely, survive extreme temperature changes, provide reliable shelter, first aid, and sanitation is critical. Knowing where to get the best lights, radios, and other supplies is easy. Ferris Survival, located at 3366 South Broadway, is a professional, reputable, full-service business providing realistic preparedness supplies at affordable prices. Stop by, go online, or call 303-781-0343, 866-781-0343. If you're spending hard-earned money on supplements, you need to know about Bio Superfood because you're probably shortchanging yourself on nutrition and value. If you're buying products claiming to provide DNA protection from radiation, you're getting ripped off by inferior copycat products because there's no other product developed or researched like Bio Superfood. Bio Superfood is one complete superfood product that addresses radiation poisoning, allergies, arthritis, diabetes, high blood pressure, and other degenerative diseases. Bio Superfood helps digestion, decreases pain and inflammation, inflammation, increases flexibility, improves heart health and brain function. It boosts your immune system and even inhibits the AIDS virus in cancerous cells. It's an antibacterial, antifungal, and anti-inflammatory. BioSuperfood is not another supplement. It's a whole food and contains over 5,000 nutrients. Call now and ask about your special discounts on your BioSuperfood purchase at 303-257-7576. That's 303-257-7576 or biosuperfood@hotmail.com.
On Shabbat, July the 7th, Beth Messiah Congregation invites you to join them in praise and worship with Sue Samuels, a Hebraic root singer from Rhode Island. Sue and her husband Brian have been sharing music together for over 15 years, and together they have 3 CDs. Again, the date is July the 7th at 10:45. That's at 8333 Acoma Way, Beth Messiah Congregation, and we'll see you there.
Welcome back to Real Truth, once again with an eye to the future. We've got an election for president coming up in November, in case you haven't heard about it. And I've got Dick Morris once again for the third and final time today talking about the youth vote. The 18 to 24-year-olds don't seem to like Obama as much as they used to. Let's hear why.
Obama's beginning to lose the very young. It's a very interesting phenomenon. We'll talk about it for lunch today. People take the youth vote, 18 to 30, and they take that as a unit, and they look at how it goes up and down. But the polling shows something very interesting. 18 to 24-year-olds are turning more decisively against Obama, and 24 to 30-year-olds are staying with him. Because the 24 to 30-year-olds lived through the election of 2008, and they have investment in Obama. They're emotionally invested in him, and they've been rooting for him all along, and they're tending to stay with him. But the people that are 18 to 24 did not participate in the election of 2008. Some of them were 14 years old when that election took place. And they don't know the Obama of 08, who's the excitement and change and hope and all of that. All they know is this evasive president who's trying to shift blame for a rotten economy that's dooming their futures and encumbering them with debt and wanting to tax them on health care. A lot of stuff that they don't like. So it's really interesting. It's like rings on a tree. If you study them, you can tell what the climatic conditions are when the tree was that size. You now have a 4 or 5 year band that's going to go through life with a Democratic bias, and you now have an emerging 4 to 5 year band that's going to go through life with a Republican bias. You can look at the American electorate, and you can tell who was a formative opinion age in their 20s when Clinton was president, when Reagan was president, when Carter was president, because they were all influenced by the events of their time. Now, that's very important, because for the most part, the only people that Obama really could count on are people who aren't looking for a job, who are in school and on campus and enthusiastic, and they can pool their enthusiasm, and there's the hothouse of a university environment, but they're not voting for him. They're increasingly alienated from him. And then the people who were his fans, who are inclined to stick with him, are the ones taking it on the chin in the job market. I mean, there's no greater unemployment than those who've just gotten out of school in their mid and late 20s. It couldn't be a worse situation for him. And that's very important. Obama can count on African Americans. Will they turn out? We don't know. Latinos, he scored a big advantage with them with his amnesty program. But I hope that Rubio runs for vice president, and I hope that neutralizes that. But the third leg of the stool is young people, and it really looks now like they're not coming back. Thanks for watching.
Nor should they come back, nor should older people come back, nor should anyone vote for this puppet who has torpedoed the United States of America. I am amazed that anybody who still will vote for him who isn't related to him. Item from Caroline Glick at the Jerusalem Post. 2 weeks ago, in an unofficial inauguration ceremony at Tahrir Square in Cairo, Egypt's new Muslim Brotherhood President Mohammed Morsi took off his mask of moderation. Before a crowd of scores of thousands, Morsi pledged to work for the release from U.S. federal prison of Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman. According to the New York Times account of his speech, Morsi said, quote, "I see signs being held by members of the crowd for Omar Abdul Rahman and detainees' pictures. It is my duty and I will make all efforts to have them free, including Omar Abdul Rahman." Otherwise known as the Blind Sheikh, Abdul Rahman was the mastermind of the jihadist cell in New Jersey that perpetrated the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. His cell also murdered Rabbi Meir Kahane in New York in 1990. They plotted the assassination of then-President Hosni Mubarak. They intended to bomb New York landmarks, including the Lincoln and Holland tunnels and the UN headquarters. Rahman was the leader of Gama al-Islamiyah, the Islamic group responsible, among other things, for the assassination of Anwar Sadat in 1981. A renowned Sunni religious authority, Rahman wrote the fatwa, or Islamic ruling, permitting Sadat's murder in retribution for his signing the peace treaty with Israel. The Islamic group is listed by the State Department as a specially designated terrorist group, unquote. There you have it. Item from Phoenix, Arizona. Michael Salmon, an Arizona resident who was jailed for 60 days for hosting a weekly Bible study in his home and on his private property, is set to appear in court today on charges that he violated his probation by continuing to hold Bible studies on his private property after being ordered not to have more than 12 people gathered on his property at any one time, and that he failed to pay more than $10,000 in related fines. Attorneys for the Rutherford Institute are representing the Phoenix resident, who's been sentenced to 2 months in jail, 3 years probation, and more than $12,000 in fines for hosting weekly Bible studies at his private residential property, allegedly in violation of the city's buildings code. What happened to Michael Salmon, the fact that his home was raided by police and he's now in jail in Tent City, illustrates the absurdity of government officials prosecuting individuals for engaging in religious activity on their private property, said John Whitehead, president of the Rutherford Institute. That Michael Salmon and his family and friends are not allowed to gather in private to study the Bible goes against every founding principle of the United States of America, unquote. Absolutely correct. It's a disgrace of the first order. Coming up, we're going to finish the show with a piece from the Economic Collapse blog. 12 hellholes that you'll find around America. Not only are they horrifying in and of themselves, but they stand as examples of exactly what the rest of America, or at least some good portions of it, will look like soon. Okay? If you want to see the future, look at the present and extrapolate. We are headed down the toilet. There are cities that are already there. We're going to see what's happening in 12 of those cities, and you'll know what just might be coming to a city near you. This is Real Truth, and we will be right back.
Why do the nations rage, and the people plot a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us break their bonds in pieces, and cast away their cords from us. Psalm 1, verses 1 through 3. Holy is the Lord.
Article 4. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the places to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
Whether you're in automotive, sporting goods, hardware, health, wellness, electrical, electronics, construction, carpet cleaning, legal, or animal care, and offer exceptional customer service and provide quality services or goods, you're honest, reliable, and professional. If you have a business, we have the customers. Let us put you in touch with our loyal, supportive, and dedicated listeners today. They're waiting to hear from you. It's inexpensive. It's effective. Call KHNC at 1-800-205-6245. Restore Health and Counseling salutes the men and women in uniform who've answered the call for our freedoms. Let's give them the hero's welcome they deserve as they have fought hard to restore peace. America's troops are our angels of protection, so stand up and salute them proudly. That's from Restore Health and Counseling at 4705 Paris Street, serving Northeast Denver with complete substance abuse counseling for adolescent to adult and for private as well as professional drug, alcohol screening and treatment and rehabilitation. Visit us at www.rhctherapy.com or call 303-373-1188.
My friends, 4 minutes and counting. Quote, do you want to see where the country's headed? If so, don't focus on the few areas that are still prosperous. New York City has Wall Street, Washington, D.C. has the federal government, Silicon Valley has Google and Facebook. Those are the exceptions. The reality is that most of the country has been experiencing a slow decline for a very long time, and once thriving cities such as Gary, Indiana, and Flint, Michigan have become absolute hellholes. They are examples of what the rest of America will look like soon. The following are 12 hellholes that are examples of what the rest of America will look like soon. Number 1, Gary, Indiana. Was once a great industrial city. Today it's one of the most dangerous cities in America, and the population has fallen by 50%. Number 2, Chicago, Illinois. There's something truly special about Chicago. But these days, the Windy City is becoming known for other things. The murder rate in Chicago is up 38% so far this year, and the recent spike in violence in the city has made national headlines. 3, Detroit, Michigan. I've written repeatedly about Detroit because it's a perfect example of what the rest of America is going to look like soon. Once upon a time, it was regarded as one of the top manufacturing cities the world has ever seen. But today it's become a total hellhole. There are very few decent jobs available, poverty has exploded, and crime is everywhere. 4, Stockton, California. Stockton is one of the 10 most dangerous cities in America, and it recently made national headlines when it declared bankruptcy. Unfortunately, as spending on law enforcement has declined, it has given the criminals a lot more room to operate in Stockton. 5, Flint, Michigan. Flint is a city that Michael Moore has made famous. It once supported hordes of middle-class workers thanks to a thriving auto industry, but today it is just a rotting shell. It looks like a war went through it, and nobody bothered to clean up the mess. Number 6, West Philly. Did you know that 36.4% of all children that live in Philadelphia are living in poverty? There are some sections of Philadelphia that are actually very nice, but there are others that look like society has forgotten about them for decades. Number 7, Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland has always had a love-hate relationship with itself. Many who live there call it the mistake by the lake. But the truth is that it once was a truly great city. Sadly, today it's a symbol of what's gone wrong with America. There's been a steady stream of businesses that have left Cleveland, and today 52.6% of all children that live in Cleveland are living in poverty. Number 8, Camden, New Jersey. If you want to see what a hellhole looks like, just visit Camden. Although you probably want to take an armed escort with you. As industry has abandoned Camden, the gangs have basically taken over. The growth industries in Camden these days are drug dealing and prostitution. In an article entitled City of Ruins, reporter Chris Hedges described what life is like in Camden at this point. Quote, there are perhaps 100 open-air drug markets, most run by gangs like the Bloods, the Latin Kings, Los Nietos, and MS-13. Knots of young men in black leather jackets and baggy sweatshirts sell weed and crack to clients, many of whom drive in from the suburbs. The drug trade is one of the city's few thriving businesses. A weapon, police say, is never more than a few feet away, usually stashed behind a trash can, in the grass, or on a porch. Number 9, St. Louis, Missouri. According to U.S. News and World Report, the most dangerous city in the United States is St. Louis. If you have a death wish, just wander around the streets of East St. Louis at night. 10, New Orleans, Louisiana. The problem that New Orleans has experienced has been well documented, but unlike most of the cities listed above, at least New Orleans has an excuse. My friends, I will let you finish the rest of this list on your own. God help each and every one of us. I'll be back tomorrow with more real truth. My friends, read, share, vote smart, and we can save America. I'll see you tomorrow.